In 2019, YouTube was caught violating the Child Online Privacy Protection Act, or COPPA. Since settling, YouTube has enacted new policies that are meant to serve as a smokescreen so they can dodge responsibility and scapegoat creators. As such, for my own protection, it is my obligation to advise you that this video is not aimed at children. My target audience is not children. Parental discretion is advised. Hey guys, how's everyone doing? This is Sir Jedi Sentinel, and welcome back to Sentinel Reviews. Today, we are looking at part 1 of Big Finish's 50th anniversary celebration of the Doctor's arch-nemesis, the Master. Masterful, released in January of 2021, written by James Goss, directed by Ken Bentley. Masterful stars Jeffrey Beavers as the Decayed Master, Milo Parker as the Young Master, Eric Roberts as the Morphant Master, Mark Gatiss as the Unbound Master, Alex McQueen as the Reborn Master, Sir Derek Jacobi as the War Master, John Sim as the Saxon Master, and Michelle Gomez as Missy. Also featured in the cast are John Colshaw as Chameleon and Katie Manning as Joe Grant. As always, I will be talking spoilers, so in the description box below, you will find the link to the Big Finish website where you can buy Masterful. I will link to both the limited edition and standard edition. But since this is still fairly new, I will try to avoid spoilers as much as possible. And Masterful is not just the title of this master story, it is the declaration of the quality of this story. Masterful is really good. And I think part of its strength is it is, compare it to Big Finish's 20th anniversary celebration, as in 20 years of Doctor Who at Big Finish, The Legacy of Time. Each story was helmed by a different writer, which led to the stories having varying quality. By having one writer tackle the entire epic, Masterful is much stronger in terms of quality. It's also a little more cohesive, rather than each story making up, rather than essentially The Legacy of Time was an overarching series made up of individual stories with a thread running through them. Masterful is one story. So what is the story of Masterful? Well, simply put, the John Sim Master, in his Big Finish debut, has won. So he invites all of his previous selves to a mansion on a decaying planet at the end of the universe to gloat. Except he didn't invite Missy. I'll get into that in a moment. Will I? Maybe. But yeah, he brought all of his previous selves to gloat, to revel in his success where they all failed. And right off the bat, all of the masters are fantastic. There's a great rapport between them. They all pair phenomenally well off each other, and they play off each other really well. Even Eric Roberts is great. Now, I keep bringing this up every time I talk about Eric Roberts' Big Finish stuff, but I do feel it warrants repeating. As good as the Lifeboat and the Death Boat was, the one flaw really was Roberts' performance. He was great, The things everyone mocks and complains about from Roberts' performance in the movie are really toned down here. But the one fault is that Roberts could not fly out to the Big Finish studio. So Jason Haig-Ellery, one of the executive producers of Big Finish, flew out to LA to record Roberts independently. And while he gave a good performance and Haig-Ellery directed him good, the reading of the scene, again, in the Lifeboat and the Death Boat, was not the same reading, the same mood of the scene that the other actors recording back at the Big Finish studio came up with. So a lot of times his performance felt odd or out of place. Here that has been remedied really well. He fits into the scene much better. But yeah, no, as I was saying, all of the masters are really well. Even Milo Parker, who is fairly unique in regards of the master. He is a younger version of the very first incarnation of the master, 12 regenerations before Roger Delgado. And at this point, he's an he's an idealist. He has an idea of what he wants to do. He has his own beliefs. He thinks he knows what the universe needs, but he has no idea. But he's not ready to commit to what the other masters have done. He's not ready to take that plunge just yet. Um, so which again brings me back to my description. He is an idealist, which will come into play later in the story because I'm trying to go through this in order. And so to so Masterful is also a play on the Five Doctors. I should also go into saying and there's a bunch of nods to the Five Doctors throughout this story, especially in the beginning. For example, the John Sim Master brought all of his incarnations here to this mansion via a time scoop. The way Borusa brought the Doctors and the Companions to the Death Zone. There's also a little funny mention by the Anthony Ainley Master saying he just got out of the Death Zone. He was just time scooped into the Death Zone, and he was now time scooped here after getting out. And I like how the Ainley Master is handled. He's played by John Colshaw, who does a really good job. I talked about that a lot in my review of Master Thief and Lesser Evils, the Time Lord Victorious short trips, but Colshaw is really uncanny as Anthony Ainley. But it's not really him, which again ties into how I like it's being handled. It's actually Chameleon. So this is going to be a bit of a brief history lesson. Chameleon made his debut in, I think it was The King's Demons. He is a shape-shifting robot who was originally used by the Master. However, after the events of that story, he became a companion of the Fifth Doctor. And then he was put in storage because no one behind the scenes knew how the Chameleon animatronic worked after its original creator died. And also, in the comics, of course, the comics would do a shape-shifting companion better with Frobisher. Anyway, that's all irrelevant to the point. The point is, a master has found Chameleon and is using him to monitor the events from a safe distance. And for the time being, he is posing as the Ainley Master. Which again, I like how it's handled. I like that it's not actually the Ainley Master. And as a demonstration of his abilities, the John Sim Master tries to use the time scoop to bring the Roger Delgado Master into the party. But predicting a trap, the Delgado Master instead pushes Joe Grant into the time scoop, which leads to her involvement in the story, and again, one that I will get into. The party is then crashed by Missy, who is just absolutely glorious once again. I love Missy so much. She is just so insane and fun and unpredictable. She really is the most unpredictable incarnation of the Master. And that's what makes her so frightening, and that's what makes her so dangerous. But Missy wasn't invited because John Sim knows what's going to happen. Which, thinking back to World Enough in Time, do we ever find out how Sim knows about his future? I've always been slightly confused by that. Like, how does he know that Missy is his future? I also have to kind of laugh, because if he's very concerned about his future with Missy, imagine what he would have done if he knew about the Lumiat. Anyway, the party is interrupted when Missy reveals to the other Masters it's a trap. The way the Master won, the way the John Sim Master won, killed the Doctor, and, enslaved this world, etc., it had damaging repercussions to him. So his plan now is to kill all of his previous incarnations and take their regenerations. Ooh, I want to talk about this real quick, too. For his first outing with Big Finish, John Sim is great. He's toned down from what he was in Series 3, which is the major reason he is my least favorite Master. He was so over the top, so zany, that just there was no menace to him because he was too goofy. You weren't scared of him, you laughed at him. But which, enough of that. But like I said, while he still plays up that energetic craziness, um, well, for one thing, he's not as good as Michelle Gomez, but he is really good at it. He really handles it very well. Now, to push things along and get to what the bulk of the story is, this party is attacked by what? I'll talk about it a little bit later. But basically, all the masters flee into the time scoop and are scattered across the timeline. They're still on the same planet, but at different points throughout its history. So now and that's really where the bulk of Masterful takes place. They're trying to figure out what happened and what's going on where they are. And I'm going to tackle these plot lines one by one. So, where do I want to start? I'll start with Jacoby because as great as Derek Jacoby is, and he is my favorite master. I've talked about this before. He does have one of the weakest plot lines in the story. So basically, he arrives on the world the master conquered at a different point in time. The John Sim Master enslaved this world, and the people eventually revolted, forcing him off the planet. But what he did has repercussions in the form of what is called the entropy wave. This sort of wave of destructive energy just raging across the planet, ravaging it. And after the people of this planet revolted and threw off the master, they have erected barriers to protect from the entropy wave, and most of the population has left in refugee ships. Jacoby's plotline takes place on the outside of this barrier. He's in a very sort of Mad Max type world, Road Warrior type world, and his plotline involves him coming across one of these roadsters and essentially trying to get back to this barrier, to the city, to figure out what's going on, where he then runs into the John Sim Master. And their rapport during this entire scene, during this entire plotline, is really the saving grace to it. I just wish there was more to say, because they spend it bickering, the John Sim Master, sort of gloating and being insufferable by design, not by the way I usually find him annoying. It's done by design, because he's gloating. And the Master realizing that the War Master, Derek Jacoby, realizing that, this isn't what he wanted, because the other Masters want to rule the universe. They want to rule planets. And you can't rule something that's been destroyed. So yeah, that's that plot line. I wish there was more to say, but going into that would talk about spoilers, and there is also a point where all of these individual plot lines end, and they all converge back together again. So I might bring it up there. During this time, Missy is still in the present, or the future, where she meets the Unbound Master, Mark Gatiss. And if I did have anything to critique, it would be that Mark Gatiss is severely underutilized here. Like, I really wish we would see more of him. I really wish he was used better, because as good as he was, that was also a weakness of the War Master Series 4 Anti-Genesis as well, that he was in it, but he wasn't used to his full potential, his full abilities. So for those of you who don't know, Mark Gatiss, as I said, is the Unbound Master. A play on the... let me grab it. Doctor Who Unbound series. Now, again, real quick, if you're new to my channel, because I've talked about it before, the Unbound series was a series of 8 stories done for Doctor Who's 40th anniversary. They were a series of what-if stories set in other dimensions. Mark Gatiss made his debut in Sympathy for the Devil, which focuses on the what-if premise of what if the Doctor had not been UNIT's scientific advisor. Later, he showed up again in the New Adventures of Bernice Summerfield, Series 3 and 4, when that Unbound Doctor, David Warner, brought Benny into his universe. And at the end of Series 4, the Doctor and Benny escaped back into our universe, the main universe the show takes place in, and then in the War Master Series 4, the Master followed him. And like I said, just in Series 4, the War Master Series 4, and here in Masterful, Mark Gatiss is severely underutilized. He meets up with Missy, and they realize what's going on with the entropy wave. And Gatiss's entire plotline is him just monitoring the progress of the wave and trying to stop it. So what Gatiss does is the Gatiss Master does is he tries to feed it. He tries to feed it what's left of his universe. He tries to feed it Gallifrey. He tries to feed it Skaro, but he ultimately fails. He and Chameleon do. That's his pairing. He's paired with Chameleon. And ultimately, when he realizes he failed, about I think 2/3 of the way through the story, he just nopes out and leaves. And I really wish we'd see more of this master. He seems such a fascinating character that we don't know the full details of. In fact, if I'm being honest, because I know he's in it, I hope he's the master in Dalek Universe. And I suppose that ties well into Missy. Like I said, similarly, Missy is also in the present/future of this world the Sim Master conquered. And she is paired up with Joe Grant. Now, what Missy is trying to do is she's trying to figure out, while fleeing from the entropy wave, I should say, she is trying to figure out the purpose of the companion, which is a plotline picked up from Missy Series 2. She essentially abducts someone, trying to pass him off as a companion because the doctor does it. And, she uses him like a toy, and now she's trying to figure out what the purpose of the companion is. Like at one point she says, "Oh, I keep losing. Are you his good luck charm?" And I really love the chemistry between Michelle Gomez and Katie Manning. It's very reminiscent of the relationship between the Roger Delgado Master and Joe Grant. And that's one thing I've said about Missy. Say what you will about her in other comparisons to the Master, but she is on par with Roger Delgado in terms of charisma. Also in Missy's storyline, there is a really fun cameo from the Lumiat. If I ever review Missy Series 2, I'll talk more about her, but that was also fun. And in the writing as well, not Mark Gatiss. Who wrote it? I just said his name. Shoot. Wow, I am so sorry. I blanked so hard on that. But no, the writer said that there was this interesting thing about Joe Grant is she could get people to do things for her just by being so nice, and it really gives Joe Grant a lot of strength because she's a companion I think gets bashed on a lot for her naivete, for her innocence. A lot of people find her kind of ditzy, and that's not really the case. And this plotline with Missy really shows Joe Grant being intelligent, which looks really good on her. The next plotline is the McQueen plotline I'll talk about. So as I mentioned, on this planet Sim conquered, much of the population tried to flee in refugee ships. And McQueen finds himself on one of these ships. And, supplies are dwindling. The trip to a new world is estimated for these people to colonize is estimated to take 65 years. And, the passengers are kept in oppressive conditions. And McQueen tries to rally them to revolt against the captain. So it's because he wants an audience with the captain. And then halfway through, we get the reveal that the captain is the new Milo Parker Master, who is trying to run this ship. And, because again, he is not willing to take the steps that he's not willing to take the steps that the other masters have taken to accomplish their goals. He's an idealist, but he's not there yet. Which is actually a great contrast with Alex McQueen, because I would say Alex McQueen is the most unhinged incarnation of the Master, The other Masters, when they do something, they will try to spin it into a positive. They'll try to see it as a good thing, you know. They see themselves in the right. They see themselves doing what they're doing for the greater good. Not the McQueen Master. He knows what he's doing is wrong. He knows he's the evil one. And he doesn't care. He loves what he does. He absolutely revels in it. So, really, despite Parker's comments about the Parker Master's comments about some of the other masters, really the McQueen Master is the farthest from what the Milo Parker Master wants to be. And their dichotomy and their opposition is so interesting. It's such a great dynamic. And I have saved the best for last, the Jeffrey Beavers storyline, because this was my favorite plot thread in this story. Similarly, Jeffrey Beavers finds him, the Jeffrey Beavers master finds himself at some points in this planet's future where one of the last denizens of the planet is living in seclusion. This woman named Kitty. Now, the master has a perception filter on him. He doesn't know how it got on him, but it's hide his burned, decaying appearance. And he's content just to stay there. I find it interesting how this plot line is sort of an expansion on Master, the Sylvester McCoy story that a lot of people enjoy. Just I find it interesting how when writers try to humanize the Master or try to, convince him to step away from his more monstrous roots, it's always the Jeffrey Beavers Master they use, which, given his decaying, monstrous appearance, might be the entire point. But as he stays here, he starts to fall in love with Kitty. And then the Eric Roberts Master shows up. And oh my god, what he does is absolutely despicable. I know I'm saying, I know I put a spoiler warning in place and I'm trying to avoid spoilers, but that's all I want to say on this plot line, because he upsets this quiet life the Beavers Master has made for himself. And like I said, he is a right bastard. I really don't want to get into more into than that, because it is such a great performance from Roberts. Very subtle, very subdued, but oh my god, it's just so great. So throughout these plot lines, the Masters, once again, once these plot lines are resolved, in a way, because the entropy wave is attacking each of these plot lines, the Masters, once again, all find themselves back at the mansion. And, how to address the conclusion? I would say that for me, the conclusion is okay. It's not as strong as it could be, but it's just because it's something I'm still trying to figure out. So essentially, because like I said, the entropy wave is destroying the universe. And the Master doesn't want that, because he wants to rule the universe, and you can't rule what's been destroyed. So they figure out the way to stop the entropy wave is to trigger a paradox, an Ouroboros paradox, which I tried to look into and figure out what it was, but all it did was give me the definition of an Ouroboros, the snake eating itself. It didn't really describe what the paradox is. Suffice to say that paradox is triggered after, again, some really great performances here at the end. Especially one of my favorite lines. There's this final, before the end of the story, there's this final exchange between the War Master, Derek Jacobi, and Missy, Michelle Gomez. And he tells her, you truly are mad, aren't you? And Michelle Gomez responds, no. I'm the one who stopped pretending to be sane. Masterful is just brilliant from beginning to end. Strong writing and strong performances all around. I'm going to give Masterful a 9 out of 10. But as I said at the beginning, this is only part 1 of my Masterful review. So join me next week when we look at part 2, something exclusive only to the limited edition of Masterful, the audiobook Terror of the Master. But those are my thoughts on Masterful. What are yours? Start a conversation in the comments below. Remember to like, comment, subscribe. Click the bell next to subscribe to get notifications when I upload. And in the description box below, you'll find the link to my Twitter where you can follow me and get updates on the channel. This is Sir Jedi Sentinel, and I'll see you guys next time.